My husband's mother demanded I sign over half of my business to her, smirking. You wouldn't have it without marrying my son. When I refused, my husband pleaded. Just give her something to keep the peace. Instead, I gave her a letter. The moment she read it, she screamed, and my husband's face turned pale. I own a small but very successful bakery in Savannah, Georgia. I built it from scratch. I didn't inherit it. No one handed it to me. I spent years perfecting recipes, saving every spare penny, and putting in 70-hour weeks to make it happen. The shop finally took off about 3 years ago, and it's been thriving ever since. People travel from other states to try our stuff. We've been featured in local magazines. It's my pride and joy. I don't have kids, so in a way this is my baby. Then I married Greg. Greg was nice when I met him, steady, kind of quiet, supportive. He worked as an accountant, and on paper we made a good match. But I noticed after the wedding that his mom seemed to think she married me too. Margot is the kind of woman who acts like she's the queen of whatever room she's in. Think of someone who's always talking over you, correcting you, and bringing up her poor health every time she's not the center of attention. You know the type. At first, it was little things. Backhanded comments about how I didn't dress like a successful business owner, or how my bakery's decor was cute but not what I do. Greg always told me to just ignore her. He said she didn't mean anything by it. Then Margot started showing up at the bakery a lot. She'd sit in the corner with her friends, loudly critiquing the pastries, the service, the employees. One time, she walked behind the counter and started rearranging things, saying she just wanted to help. I asked her politely not to go into staff areas. She laughed like I was joking. But the worst came 2 months ago. Greg and I invited Margot over for dinner. She showed up wearing this huge flashy necklace and carrying a bottle of wine she bragged cost more than our monthly mortgage. About halfway through the meal, she said completely out of nowhere, "So I've decided I should own half of your bakery." I thought she was joking. I actually laughed. She wasn't laughing. She leaned back in her chair, smirked, and said, "You wouldn't have that business if you hadn't married my son. You owe us. You wouldn't have the time or the stability to run it without him handling the house and bills." Now that made my blood boil. Greg does some chores, sure, but I pay for most of the bills. He works part-time now because he said my income meant he could finally relax a bit. I never complained. I thought that was part of being a team. So I looked at Greg, expecting him to shut this down, and you know what he said? He said, "Maybe you should just give her something to keep the peace." To keep the peace? I stared at him and he wouldn't even make eye contact. Margot kept going. She said I should have papers drawn up giving her half ownership. She said it was only fair. Since family supports family, she said, with her experience in event planning, she could help the bakery grow beyond what I could do on my own. Then she winked and said, "And besides, it'll all be mine someday anyway." Greg didn't say a word. I told Margot I'd think about it, and I did, but not the way they hoped. See, what Margot didn't know is that about a year before I met Greg, I'd opened my bakery with a silent partner. That silent partner is my brother. He's a lawyer. He helped me fund the last bit I needed to get started, and in return he owns 20% of the business. It's all legal and airtight. He doesn't interfere. He doesn't want creative control. He just gets a cut of the profits, and in exchange he makes sure my contracts are solid. Greg signed a prenuptial agreement, a really good one. He has no claim to my business, my property, or any of my assets. That was something I insisted on from day one because I worked too hard to build this from nothing. So, Margot thinking she was entitled to anything was laughable. But I wasn't going to just say no. That's not enough when someone like her tries to take what's yours. So, I decided to respond in writing. The next time Margot came into the bakery 3 days later, of course acting like she owned the place, I was ready. I had an envelope waiting. She strutted up to the counter wearing some ridiculous fur-trimmed coat like we weren't in Georgia in the middle of spring, smiling like she'd already won. She said, "So, did you bring the paperwork?" I handed her the envelope. She opened it right there. The first page was a letter I'd had my brother draft. It explained in simple terms that she had no legal right to any part of my business, that the business was started before Greg, protected by legal contracts, and that any further harassment about ownership would result in legal action. The second page was a formal cease and desist. She read the first paragraph and her face turned red. By the time she finished the second page, she was shaking. Then she screamed loud, right there in the middle of the bakery in front of customers, my staff, everyone screaming that I was ungrateful, that I was tearing this family apart, that I was just some greedy little. Well, you get the idea. Greg walked in about 2 minutes later. I don't know if she called him or what, but the second he saw her holding the letter, he went pale. I mean, ghost white. I looked him right in the eye and said, "So this is the piece you wanted?" He didn't answer. Margot stormed out, swearing up and down she'd take me to court. Good luck with that. Greg didn't come home that night. I don't know if he was with her or just too ashamed. I didn't care. I was already making other plans. Margot didn't just storm out that day. That was only the start. The next morning, I woke up to about 30 missed calls and texts from Greg. The messages started out calm. "We need to talk. You're overreacting. Mom didn't mean it like that." Then they got desperate. "Please just apologize. Apologize to her, you're making things worse if you don't fix this. I don't know what will happen to us." I ignored him. I needed time to think, and I already knew I wasn't going to apologize for protecting my business from a woman who thought she could just claim half of it like it was some hand-me-down sweater. When I showed up to the bakery that morning, 2 of my regular employees were waiting for me outside. "We thought you should see this," one of them said, handing me her phone. Margot had written a long, ugly Facebook post, public of course. She tagged the bakery and everything. According to her, I was a fraud who had used her poor son for financial security, and once I made it big, I tried to cut them out like trash. She told everyone that Greg had supported me through hard times and that without him, I'd still be selling cupcakes out of my car. The post ended with, "It's just sad when family becomes greedy. Pray for us. #family first, #broken heart." And then the comments, oh the comments. All her little friends chiming in, offering their prayers, their support, promising to boycott my bakery. I didn't cry. I didn't even get mad right away. I just felt this cold, clear switch flip inside me. I knew right then this wasn't about Margot getting a piece of my bakery. This was about control. Margot thought she could scare me, humiliate me into giving her what she wanted. She wanted to ruin my name and my business unless I played along. Craig texted again an hour later. "Mom says she'll take the post down if you just give her 15%. Just a small share. It's not a big deal." That was the moment I realized my husband wasn't just spineless. He was part of it. A few days passed. I thought maybe they'd let it die down when I didn't react, but no. Margot doubled down. She came into the bakery again, this time with Greg. They both walked right in like it was any normal day, like she hadn't dragged my name through the mud online. Greg was quiet, Margot wasn't. She spoke loudly so everyone in the bakery could hear. "I hope you're ready for the family meeting tonight. We're going to sort out this little misunderstanding." I looked at Greg. He nodded like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. Now let me pause here. Family meeting, do you know what that meant? Apparently, Margot had invited Greg's 2 sisters and their husbands, plus a few of her friends, to sit me down and convince me to do the right thing. I declined politely at first, just as simple as, "I won't be attending." That's when things got ugly. Margot stepped closer, lowered her voice and said, "You're going to regret this. You're embarrassing my son. Do you think anyone in this town is going to keep supporting your little shop after they hear how you treat your own family?" I was done playing nice. I said, "Get out." She looked stunned, like no one had ever said that to her before. "Excuse me," she gasped out. I repeated, "Both of you." Greg looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. Margot sputtered something about, I told her to go right ahead and they left, but I knew that wasn't the end. The very next morning, a review bomb started. 1-star reviews popped up all over Google and Yelp, all clearly fake. "Found hair in my pie." "Owner was rude and unprofessional." "Treats customers like garbage." "Overpriced." "Save your money." All posted within hours of each other. Some of them from accounts that had profile pictures of Margot's friends. She didn't even try to hide it. My bakery's overall rating started to drop. And then there was Greg. I asked him to move out. I said I needed space and frankly I wasn't sure what was left to save. He acted hurt, like I was the one being unreasonable. "You're going to throw away our marriage over some paperwork?" he asked. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "You mean over your mother trying to steal my business and you helping her?" He packed a bag and left. I heard later that he moved in with Margot. You'd think this would be the part where Margot finally felt like she'd won, but no. That woman took it a step further. She filed a trademark claim against my bakery's name. You read that right. Margot, who has never baked a day in her life, tried to claim that she was the true creator of my brand and that I'd stolen it from her. She claimed she'd inspired the concept during family brainstorming sessions and had been an uncredited co-founder. It was so insane I laughed out loud when my lawyer called me about it, but it was real. She actually paid for a lawyer to send a cease and desist letter to me, demanding I either hand over the name or pay her a licensing fee. And through it all, Greg just stood by her. He'd gone from keeping the peace to backing her 100%. I realized at that moment that neither of them was going to stop until they either got what they wanted or I was ruined. But here's the thing about people like Margot. They always underestimate the quiet ones, the ones who don't explode, the ones who just listen and wait. And oh, I waited. I gathered receipts, screenshots, witness statements, every fake review, every message, every time Margot tried to step over the line. My brother, the lawyer, started putting together a plan. And just when Margot thought she had the upper hand, we were ready to act. A week after the trademark stunt, I thought Margot had finally thrown everything she could at me. Then the health inspector showed up. First, I didn't think much of it. Surprise inspections happen sometimes, right? But this guy wasn't doing a routine check. He came in already suspicious, going over everything twice, then 3 times. He pulled me aside and said, "We've had multiple anonymous complaints, serious ones. Apparently, someone had reported that we were using expired ingredients, leaving food out overnight, and this is the best part, that we were infesting the neighborhood with rodents." Rodents. My bakery, which is spotless and regularly passes inspections with flying colors. Figure out who filed those complaints. Margot was officially trying to shut me down. I stayed calm with the inspector. He left without finding a single thing wrong, but he warned me that if any more reports came in, they'd have to keep following up. He said it's common when someone's targeting a business to keep hitting them with these complaints. Margot wasn't just being petty anymore. She was playing dirty. She wasn't trying to steal my bakery. She was trying to destroy it. And Greg, oh Greg, thought this was all a misunderstanding. He called me that night. "Mom says she didn't do it, you're just being paranoid. And honestly, maybe if you just apologized and sat down with her, this could all go away." I hung up on him. But the next day, another twist. One of my own employees quit. She didn't even give notice. Just left a scribbled note on the counter. "I'm sorry, I can't deal with this drama." Margot had been in her ear. I didn't have proof, but I knew it. That same employee was friends with one of Margot's daughters. I heard through the grapevine Margot was telling people the bakery was going under, and they should start looking for new jobs before it's too late. It was like Margot was playing chess and trying to cut off every piece I had left. But Margot made one mistake. She thought I was playing defense. While she was out there filing fake complaints, writing Facebook posts, and whispering poison into people's ears, I was working quietly behind the scenes. I wasn't just gathering evidence for legal action. I was setting a trap. Because here's the twist. Remember my brother, the silent partner? Turns out he's friends with a reporter, a good one. Local news loves a small-town scandal, especially one with a business getting targeted by a concerned family member. I didn't leak the story right away, I waited. I wanted Margot to feel like she won. Then we got the perfect hook. Margot wasn't content with attacking me. She started telling people that she was going to open her own bakery, right across the street from mine. I'm not making this up. She even called it something suspiciously close to my bakery's name, just slightly changed the wording and slapped her name on it. She posted about it on Facebook like it was already happening. "Coming soon," she wrote. "A true family-run bakery with recipes passed down for generations." Margot's idea of cooking is putting frozen lasagna in the oven. But that was it. That was the moment I passed everything to my brother. The fake reviews, the health inspector reports, the social media posts, the trademark claim, the sudden competition popping up across the street with a knockoff name. The reporter ate it up. She started digging, and once she did, the dirt poured out. Turns out Margot had been talking big, but she hadn't filed for any actual business licenses. The building she claimed she was moving into was still under contract with someone else, and the logo she posted online was stolen straight from a random Google image. She hadn't designed anything. She hadn't bought equipment. There was no bakery. It was all fake, just another scare tactic to make me feel cornered. And while the reporter was working on that angle, my brother filed a legal notice against Margot for defamation and business interference. But hold on, because here's where it got really good. Greg called me again. Mom says she's willing to back off if you agree to give her 10% and stop the legal stuff. Oh no. That man thought this was a negotiation. He thought this was still salvageable. I told him I wasn't interested. I told him the story was already with the reporter. I told him that the only backing off I'd be doing was when I handed everything to my lawyer. Greg went quiet for a moment then, and I swear to God this is real, he said. You're ruining the family. Not sorry we tried to ruin your business. Not sorry we filed fake complaints. Not sorry we tried to steal from you. Nope, I was the problem for standing up to them. And you know what Margot did next? She tried to show up to work here in my bakery like nothing had happened. She walked through the door with sunglasses on like some washed-up celebrity trying not to get noticed, and ordered a coffee like it was just another Tuesday. The whole place went dead silent. I walked out from the back and said, "You're not welcome here. Leave." She actually looked shocked. She said, "But the story isn't out yet. You don't have to do this." That's when I realized Margot thought this was just some game of chicken. Like we were both trying to scare each other into backing down, and eventually I'd fold. I didn't fold. I had her escorted out. And the reporter, she called me the next day. The story was going live, front page of the local section, photos, documents, screenshots, everything. And trust me, this ride's not over yet. Would you like me to keep building this out? The storm's only getting started. The day the article dropped was the day Margot's empire of lies burned down. The headline: Local bakery owner targeted in bitter family feud. Fake reviews, false claims, and a phantom rival business. They didn't hold back. The reporter dug into everything. Margot's fake health complaints, the bogus trademark filing, the coming soon bakery that didn't exist, the review bombing, even Greg's role in the whole thing. Screenshots, quotes, emails, it was all there in black and white. They even interviewed some of my customers and employees who gladly told the reporter how Margot had been acting like she ran the place and scaring people off. The story spread fast. Facebook, Twitter, the local news picked it up. Suddenly, Margot wasn't the victimized matriarch anymore. She was the woman who tried to destroy her daughter-in-law's business because she couldn't control her. And Greg, his name was right there in the article too, supporting it, defending her. That night, I closed the bakery early, not because I had to, but because Margot called and said they were coming. Coming over, I wasn't sure what they meant until the doorbell rang and I saw the whole crew standing on my porch. Margot, Craig, his two sisters, their husbands, and Margot's best friend, like some kind of intervention for the ungrateful bakery owner. Margot marched in without waiting for me to say anything. "You've embarrassed this family publicly," she hissed before the door even closed. "Do you realize what you've done? You've humiliated us." Greg stood behind her, looking exhausted but not stopping her. He didn't even look at me. I stayed calm. "You humiliated yourselves. I just told the truth." "Truth? We were willing to forgive you." Margot snapped. "Even now, I'm still open to making this right. Take down the article, apologize, tell them you overreacted, and give us what we asked for, 10%. That's nothing to you." I laughed out loud, not because it was funny but because it was insane. And that's when the big moment happened, the twist I didn't see coming. Greg finally spoke, but not to me, to Margot. "Mom, stop." Margot whipped around. Greg looked like he'd aged 10 years in a week. Dark circles under his eyes, shoulders slumped, voice flat. "Stop. It's over. You've ruined everything." Everyone went quiet. Even Margot's best friend stopped scrolling on her phone. Greg rubbed his face. "I didn't think it would get this far. I thought if we scared her a little, she'd give in. I didn't think she'd fight back. I didn't think she'd expose it." Margot blinked like she couldn't believe what he was saying. "Gregory, don't you dare act like this is my fault." "It is your fault," he said louder this time. "You pushed it. You wanted half her business. You started the reviews. You made the complaints. You came up with the fake bakery. I just wanted to keep the peace." Greg looked at me then for the first time in weeks. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. And I don't know what I expected to feel in that moment. Relief, satisfaction, but it was just empty. Too little, too late. Margot looked like she was going to explode. Her face turned bright red. You ungrateful little. After all I've done for you. Greg cut her off. You didn't do this for me. You did it for yourself. She opened her mouth like she was going to argue, but no words came out. And then Margot did the one thing I never thought she'd do, she cried. Not the fake dramatic crying she did when someone told her no at brunch, but real crying, angry, ugly crying, tears streaming down her face, voice cracking. I built this family. You think any of you would have anything without me? I kept us together. I made you who you are. And this little gold digger comes in here and turns you all against me. That was it, the final play, the same line she'd used on everyone over and over again. The poor martyr mother. But no one moved to comfort her, not even her daughters. They stood in the doorway, looking at their shoes like they wanted to disappear. Margot stormed out after that, slamming the door so hard the pictures on the wall rattled. Greg lingered. Nowhere to go, he said. And you know what? I told him. Not my problem. He left and I locked the door behind him. Margot deleted her Facebook account the next day. Guess she couldn't handle the comments. People weren't exactly offering prayers and casseroles anymore. They were calling her out. Greg moved back in with her last I heard, or maybe one of his sisters. I don't know, I stopped asking. The bakery business boomed. People came in just to say they supported me. Customers who hadn't been in months showed up, ordering extra, leaving big tips, telling me how glad they were that I stood up for myself. But when I went home at night, it was quiet, too quiet. I thought I'd feel victorious. I didn't, not really. It's hard to celebrate when the person you thought loved you turned out to be standing behind you holding a knife. Some friends told me I should forgive Greg, that he got caught up in his mom's games. But here's the thing. He knew what she was doing and he let it happen. For what? Peace? Money? Approval? It doesn't matter. I didn't just lose a husband. I lost the belief that he was ever really on my side. But I gained something better, freedom. No more Margot, no more Greg. No more tiptoeing around someone else's ego. Just me, my bakery, and a town full of people who know exactly who I am and exactly what I'm not willing to put up with. Sometimes people ask if I regret how it all went down. I don't, not for a second. Some people want to play games, they forget that some of us are playing for keeps.